Good afternoon and welcome to Lunch with Lisa. Today is episode 37 in week 8. And we're so glad that you've found us in our new home on YouTube streaming live. We're really excited about this. Not only do we love our new platform, but we love the ability to reach so many more people with so much more access to people who A, could either be on the webinar or B, who can learn so much from the webinar. The feedback that we've had has been terrific that people are learning from it, they're referencing it, they're sharing it with other people, and we really thank you for that. We want to encourage you to send us your ideas for what we should be promoting on the webinar and who we should be promoting. That's how we get some of our best guests is from our viewers like you. So lunch with Lisa at nickersoncos.com is the best way to reach us and best way to share your ideas. So I don't know about you, but it is a beautiful day out. I'm so excited. I feel like spring is finally here and we're getting ready to go into the long weekend. So with that, I'd love to introduce today's guest, Cass McCrory. And Cass is a marketing strategist, speaker, and trainer, and she's host of the podcast Real Women in Business. And I'm actually excited that I will be recording my podcast with Cass tomorrow. So my webinar, her podcast, and what's great about it is that it's featuring so many different women in business, their challenges, their pivots, their ups, their downs, their successes. And of course, Cass can talk more about that. But Cass, you've been featured in Oprah Magazine, a guest on The Lively Show, and Creative Superhero. And you're here today and you're going to share what you've learned from the more than 85 women that you've interviewed on your podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, there's been
And
over 100.
over 100 now. And that's amazing. And as I know too, it takes a lot of time to find the right people and prepare and talk through with them. But I've also found I've learned so much from the people that I've interviewed and that I carry with me every day now in what I do. So I'm so excited to hear from you what you see as maybe similarities or themes and anyway, I just can't wait to hear from you. So thank you for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So, talk to me first. Explain to our viewers your podcast.
Sure. So, full transparency, 3 years ago, I had this idea that I wanted to do a podcast with real women
Mhm.
because I was in a position where I had young children. I owned my own business and I was reading books from people like Sheryl Sandberg and I was inspired, but it wasn't accessible. There was a big disconnect between what I could actually make happen in my life
Mhm.
and what was being talked about. And
Sure.
I felt like, "Oh gosh, I really want there to be somebody that I can look to and be like, 'That's a real person.'"
Mhm.
And then I found out I was gonna have another baby, and it needed to go on the shelf for a long time because it was just not in the cards to do. And
Sure.
then finally the timing struck, and last May, we decided we would get it going, and I sent out an email to half a dozen friends and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do a test interview with me? I'm not
Mhm.
promising you that it's going to become anything, but I think it might." And
Mhm.
after the 3rd interview, I was, like, so moved, so inspired by the women that
Mhm.
I said, "We have to do this. We have to just do
Right.
it for as long as we can do it."
I know
Yeah,
that feeling. I feel like every day I get so much out of this. I'd be at such a loss to not have it now. It'd be such a miss in my day. And it breaks up the day for me. And I think for a lot of our viewers so nicely that it's a lunch break. People grab their lunch and jump on to see us live. And if they can't, they catch it later. But
yeah.
it's probably again, same for you, where the people that you're meeting and what you're learning just really enriches everything that you do. And you're a marketing strategist also, where creativity and new ideas are so important to what we do that learning from others is just another part of it.
Yeah, I think my own just innate curiosity just fuels the whole fire of it too. It's I really wanna know what's going on, and I think that that transcends the conversation, and it's been really amazing. I can't imagine not doing it now, and every time we have a new guest and I'm getting ready for that episode's recording, I'm feeling like this anticipatory just elation because
Right.
you're about to learn something from somebody else about what's worked for them and what hasn't. And then
Mhm.
you have the opportunity to try that on. And then I have the great opportunity to bring it a lot of other people.
I'd love to know from the people who are watching if anybody is an entrepreneur, a business owner, a leader of their business, and that could be a man or a woman, because I know that men are really trying to better understand how to elevate women within their office, and that maybe
Yeah.
they have biases that they didn't even realize they have. I think hidden biases is a new term that people are starting to embrace. That they just didn't realize that they were thinking that way, and they don't mean to. It wasn't something they meant to do. So I'm really thrilled for how many men watch when we have women leaders on that they know that they can learn from. Cass, what do you see is consistent across all of your podcasts? There must be a theme that's consistent.
There is. There's this intuitive knowing. Almost
Mhm,
every single woman on the podcast ever has had a moment where they were like, "I just knew. I had a gut
mhm,
feeling."
right,
For a very long number of times, I had so many women say the exact phrase, "I just always felt wired for work."
mhm,
And it was just this intuitive gut level knowing, and everybody has it. And what's really been curious for me is when people think, "Oh, do I trust that part of myself?" And then
mhm.
when they don't, the missteps and kind of the twists and turns of the adventure, and when they
Sure.
do, what happens that, transpires faster than they ever thought possible, which is really exciting.
What about how many people talk about when they knew better too? There was something that they shouldn't do.
Yeah. So, and I think, we all have this moment, right, where we're like, "Oh, I'm not sure I should be doing this." The job that we said yes to, putting on the wedding dress, that first marriage or sometimes the second marriage, and like you're just putting on this dress and you're like, "Oh my gosh, should I be doing this?" And there's
Right.
this gut level that you're like, "This is not a good decision." But then for a million different reasons we've stacked up, you know,
Mhm.
this is what I went to school for. This is my parents have paid so much money.
Right.
All of these reasons that we conjure, we go
Right.
through with it, and then we realize, "Oh, that was the misstep. Okay."
Right.
But that's where the learning is too. So it's kind of like, there's good and then there's better because you learn.
I have a question that a woman asked me earlier today, to actually ask you on the webinar today. And she said she's very accomplished, and but she's finding that she's putting work ahead of things in her, and she's a business leader herself, but she's not doing the things that she needs to do. It's procrastination. And we were talking about whether it's procrastination, but she's very focused on her job. She's very focused on her work and what she does. And is this something that you see often with women leaders, that they forget about the things that are important to them? Like, she even said she gave herself some goals during this time in COVID of like, I need to refinance my house. I need to do some things for me. Do you see this as consistent?
Yes, because as women, we wanna be caretakers. I mean, that's part of what we're innately good at. And so we see need and we wanna fill that need. And then we don't create adequate container for us to do the work that we need to do for us. And so there's a couple of things that I've heard from women and that I've personally experienced where we have to create a container where we're taking care of what we need to take care of, and we need to hold the boundary on that really tight. Because if we let it creep in even one time,
Mhm.
now there's a hole in the container, and we know how a container with a hole in it holds liquid. It doesn't.
Right.
And so we need to create really strong containers. Like, this is the bandwidth that I have to give to my work.
Right.
This is the container that it needs to fit within. And so many times women will say, I felt like I was working all of the time. And it's
Right.
like, well, work will expand to fit the container that you give it.
Right. That's actually so true.
Yeah, it always will.
True.
It
You know,
always will.
I heard a great term with boundaries once, and it was, are you opening windows or are you opening doors? And a window
Ooh,
can fly in and out, but a door, you open it or you close it. Now, I guess you can open and close a window too, but it was just interesting, the theory of it, that when you think about your boundaries, and if there are people that just always uh, you know, don't adhere or don't respect boundaries, that window's open, right?
yeah,
Hot air, it's like leaving the heat on. The hot air is just going right out the window, right? But if you close the door, and you choose to open it when you want to. I find that the most successful people have really strong boundaries that they ask people to respect. And that if people don't respect them, they need to sort of rethink their core of the people around them. And
Yeah.
that really helps them succeed and not get pulled into a million different directions.
Definitely. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to establish boundaries.
Hmm.
The more people in your life that you have, the easier it will become, and that's a
Right.
hard thing to hear initially because 'cause you're like, "Ah, it was so hard to maintain a boundary with one person. How could I possibly maintain a boundary with a team of 15 people?" And it's like
Right.
but it becomes exponentially easier the more people that you bring in, and so I
Sure.
think that's a really reassuring feeling too, knowing, yeah, the first time you hold the boundary, that's hard, but the
Hmm.
second time, it's gonna be a little easier, and then so on.
Sure. With
Have you
over a
found
hundred,
sorry.
go ahead, Cass.
I was just curious if you found that your own boundaries had been, tested as we're in this space of COVID and working from home, like, are the boundaries muddier for you?
Yes, and I'm sure there are people watching right now who would love to comment on that on the side. I'm not encouraging them to. But yes, especially with my office so close to the family room and the kitchen, it's very easy to walk in. And even just last night, we had dinner, and I said, I'm just going to do one thing back in my office. And it was almost like once my butt was back in the chair, I sat here for hours, just going through things, looking at things, doing things. And there's been no boundary of turning off work. It's been, I'm home, I'm working, except for I have on the weekends completely shut it off, purposefully not sat at my desk at all, and try to do as much as I can outside so that I'm not doing work. But I found that that boundary is really hard. The other one, and I think you have to make agreements with your family. So some people have talked about with their kids, what's the rule for when you can come into mommy's office and when you can't. And what I've done with my kids is, because my kids are older, they're late high school and college, they come in and out a lot. They're bopping back and forth between my house and my ex-husband's house. And so when they're here, I actually do want them to feel that they're a priority. And so very rarely will I not actually say during a meeting, do you mind just holding 1 minute while one of the kids comes in to ask me a quick question or just to let me know that they're here? And it's a very rare time now I'll say, nope, I'll go like this. And not even like I see them coming in, like,
Yeah,
nope, and they know it's because they can't interrupt that particular Zoom or call, but that's rare now. And so they do feel that they have that level of importance. So that's changed the dynamic with my kids, that they feel like, yep, I'm still a priority, even if mom's in her office all day, because they do get that minute. And my office and some of the people that I'm on with actually have the same challenges or the same things going in their home. And so therefore they respect it. So that's where I feel like I've created a good boundary with my kids, but I've not created good boundaries for myself. That's the truth.
I think it's really hard, and I hear this a lot from women that I've interviewed. It's hard when you love your work, because
Yes,
when you love your work, when you're curious about your work, when being in the work actually feels really good,
right.
and it's really tricky to step outside of it and be like, "No," it's almost a punishment to not be within it sometimes, and that's
Sure.
hard, especially as a business owner.
Well, there's so much that's happening right now that's actually very exciting too. So, because I own an agency that's marketing and public relations, there's a lot in the news now that wouldn't have been in the news a few months ago, just about how cities are changing and environments are changing, how we even look at our food sources and our food networks. I mean, things that we weren't thinking or talking about. And now we're working on those strategies, or we're working with business leaders on how they're positioning themselves in the market. And watching other people, watching the news, reading other stories in the news, I'm finding fascinating, and I'm just engrossed in it, like what you're saying. And, I just find myself for hours on end sitting in front of the computer, whether I'm reading something new or learning something new or pitching something new. And you're right, I love it. So it's hard to break away. And I do think this is a unique time that we may not have back. Jen Welter said in one of our first episodes, she said, we all wanted more time and the genie came out of the bottle. So now
Yeah.
we have it. And I feel like I have this time that I can be reading and doing all these things. It's just going to be an interesting moment in time. So, but I'm wondering, with the over 100 women that you've interviewed. So we have boundaries, we have intuition.
Yeah.
What do you see as challenges, other challenges women may have that they've all found that they've overcome or they're still working to overcome?
There's some perceived challenges
Hmm.
of feeling fulfilled in their work,
Yeah.
where women will say things like, "I do this. I'm a management consultant. I'm very successful. I'm very good at it. I have a lot of esteem with my colleagues and the people that I work with. But
Hmm.
if you really wanna know what I love, it's this." And there's this feeling of, um, almost missed opportunity or,
Hmm.
should I be doing both things? Should I have a side hustle? Should I have, a multi-passionate element to my work?
Right.
And there's this question of fulfillment. Like, am I fulfilled with my work? And do I need work to actually do the fulfilling?
Sure. Or
And
is it
there's that.
self-fulfilling? Because
Yeah.
I do feel like sometimes people can jump to jump to jump, and it's really that they're not happy with themselves, or maybe they're not happy with something within their family or their relationship. And I've given that advice to people. I've said, "You're not happy in your marriage, so it doesn't matter what job you're in. If you're going home and you're unhappy, you're not going to like your job." So
Yeah.
that's another piece of it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. It's rarely the job that's the problem, it's almost always the person doing it. So if you're unhappy, you're going to find yourself unhappy at any number of different jobs that you could do.
Right.
There is
Right.
no missing piece here. It's
Sure.
your own personal fulfillment. So that's definitely a challenge. There's a challenge with, um, just feeling appreciated. I think
Mhm.
that's another thing that women really
Mhm.
struggle with. One of the last questions that I ask every single guest is, "How can I help you feel appreciated?"
Mhm.
And for so many, that question is like fear-based. It's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know. When was the last time I felt appreciated?"
Right.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with fulfillment.
I remember thinking that I didn't need appreciation from clients. I felt like if they were working with us and they were paying their bills, I was a happy girl. And if I was unhappy with that client, well, I'd take that money I just earned and buy something with it. That was a great piece of advice someone gave me 20 years ago. Unhappy with that client, cash their check. Get back at them. You cash that check and do something for yourself. Because if you don't have that client, then you wouldn't have that. What I did realize over the last couple of years, though, is that we did have some clients who were they were either so difficult or just so unappreciative and demanding, and to the point of many times even being disrespectful. It wasn't worth that check. That check was actually taking away from our love of the job, our own corporate culture, and our wanting to do the work. And so when we walked away from those clients, and now I can say every one of our clients really appreciates our work and is respectful of our work and our time, it makes work so much more enjoyable and you want to work hard. And so I found that's where I feel like I've matured in my thought process. Now, don't get me wrong. You never, if you need the money, don't walk away from the money if you need it. But when you can really focus purposefully on those clients and that work that is a good yin yang of respect, that's very helpful. I believe in having a good culture and a good work feeling. We do have a question from a woman. Any advice for younger women just starting out in their career? Do you have any lessons that you've learned early on, or I would ask, did you learn from your podcast guests?
I learned this lesson myself. I've heard it from other guests. Follow the seeds, follow the trail. As new
Mhm.
opportunities come up, check in with yourself. Be like, does that sound like a good idea? And then go for it. Take the risks. So
Mhm.
frequently, we look at our business decisions, our career decisions as once and for all decisions.
Mhm.
And there isn't a single once and for all decision outside of having children. Outside of having children, there are no once and for all decisions, and I can't even tell you how many hours in weeks I have lamented pros and cons lists, you know, going to see a psychic, like, looking for the right answer from somebody else about what I should do next, and
Mhm.
almost always taking the leap was the right thing to do. And if
Mhm.
it wasn't the right thing to do, I learned something that I couldn't have learned any other way.
Right.
Yeah.
I my daughter had a really big decision a couple of years ago to make. She was a very good athlete, a very good gymnast, and for her to go to the next level, she would have to go to a part-time high school. And that was a giant decision, and she was just tormenting herself with this decision. And what I said to her is, "You can make the decision, and then you can make another decision if you don't like it. But
Yeah.
if you don't make a decision, then you'll have never tried and you'll never know." And so she did make the decision. She did part-time high school. She hated it. And then she went back to full-time high school. But I said, "What an amazing lesson you learned in high school that some people don't learn their whole lives, which
Yeah.
is you don't have to not make a choice. You don't have to not try. You tried. You didn't like it. You made another choice. It's that simple." And so the other piece of advice that I would give young women is to just speak up more and elevate themselves and not think that they don't know something or they don't have an idea. I say to so many of the younger kids in my office, many of them are not much older than my own kids. And my own kids tell me all the time that they know more than I do. So they must know more than I do too. But related to even social media and the way people are communicating, our young team members really do have a lot of information that we need and that we want them to bring to the table. So I really encourage younger team members to put that hand up, to offer that opinion, and to be seen and find other opportunities outside of our office to join organizations, take leadership roles, practice your management with other groups so that you can bring that back. And I think that, and you tell me what you think, Cass. Many other successful women will tell you that they have other organizations they're involved in that
Yeah.
really help them find that inner purpose, help solve challenges within our office so they don't feel the need to jump, jump, jump all around. They can go to this peer group of women who are at a professional level, such as theirs, to help with that advice.
Absolutely. I mean, having a network of women, whether that is, a formally formed mastermind that you're a part of that elevates one another, or it's, you're volunteering together in a very
Right.
specific function. I mean, in my own career, I have found at all times it is helpful for me to not just own a business, it is helpful
Mm,
for me to be on a board of a nonprofit.
right.
I support Sojourner Home, which is a local non for profit that helps women and children out of homelessness.
That's
Being
terrific.
involved with that, you know, having a mastermind group that I meet with on the regular, having a personal coach. I mean,
Mhm,
if we want to change ourselves, if we want to transform, if we want to get to the next place, that happens with support. That doesn't happen alone. And that was another thing that I've heard over and over again from women is that when they got the support they needed, they could
mhm.
do so much more than they thought possible.
Sure. I want to jump on. You just brought up coach,
Yeah.
and a lot of people used to think that that was just a thing, right? And now it's becoming a much bigger thing. And I always think of, I'm in Boston, and well, I can't reference Tom Brady as much as I used to anymore. But Tom Brady has a couple coaches, right? He has his personal
Many.
coach, nutrition and strength training. He had his coaches on the field. He had his, the Belichick as well as other coaches, many coaches helping him develop to be the very best athlete in the world. And so, why wouldn't we have coaches in what we do, whether it's a CEO coach, whether it's a personal coach and a life coach? I worked with a life coach who was amazingly transformative in my life. Tell me about your coach and what did you do with a coach that helped you transform? And
Yeah.
uh, I'd love to know more about that.
So I first worked with an amazing coach named Jennifer Rassiopi. You can find her on Instagram. She's prolific and just a beautiful human being. She works with cycles. So she is an astrologer and a business coach, and she comes from large consultancy background. So she's not all woo woo, but she isn't just a straight business coach either. And what she
Sure.
helped me with was pacing. I was a hustler and it didn't feel good. And I
Mm,
was feeling really run down and always pushing, striving, pushing, striving. And she
right.
helped me use the moon as a guide into when is it that I'm pushing hard and when am I letting things come to me? And
Mhm.
find the cyclical nature in my business so that I didn't burn myself out into a pile of nothing. She was incredibly transformative in that season of my life. She also helped me, like, triple my business. I mean,
Wow.
this was not just, a drop in the water here. This was big impact. Most recently, I worked with this wonderful woman, Elise Bennon, as a coach, and Elise is a sharp woman who knows content marketing, who
Mhm.
knows creatives, and I'll be honest, she babysat me. I had
Mhm.
work that I needed to do that I wasn't going to do, and she babysat me and helped me do the work, and I initially felt pretty embarrassed by that, like, do I really need somebody to help me just sit there and do the work and kind of help me be critical of it on the spot
Right?
and encourage me to push it forward? I do. I do need that.
Well, we're not all perfect at everything, and when you say that, I think about that there were times I would be embarrassed I didn't know something, and therefore then you don't do it, but then you don't get it done, and that's even worse, and there are so many people who are willing to just help you and
Yes,
show you what it is. I think
yes.
something interesting about your coach, I worked with a woman, Lauren Mackler, and being a former athlete myself, I am highly competitive. And she helped me realize that I'm too competitive for my own good, that I would forego what was maybe best for me sometimes, or what I needed to do for a client because I was so focused on winning. And I'll give that the example of I would have to be we won a social media contest once, and I was so focused on winning the social media contest that maybe I could have been focusing more on business development during that time, but we were going to win, right? And so I didn't realize that maybe sometimes I didn't need to be that competitive. I can use that competitive spirit as a benefit, but not to the point where I'm foregoing something else that's important to do. And that was really, really helpful to me to recognize that where I always just thought that high levels of competition was my biggest strength, that I was going to do anything at all costs to make it happen. And I still do that, but it's structured a little better now. So
Yeah.
really,
I think
really
that
amazing how
competitive thing
you
is
help
so many women that I talk to are competitive. I'm also very competitive. And I found, especially in the quarantine, where the only people I could compete with were my family.
me.
That is when I really like, I am a Peloton devotee, like,
Love
I'm
my Peloton.
strapping into the bike because it is the place that I get to be competitive right now, because
Mhm.
nobody wins if I'm competitive
Right.
upstairs in my
Right.
life right now.
Right.
Nobody wins.
Do you know another thing I learned about competition was that when you compete against your significant other or your kids, there's a winner and a loser. And it can be very damaging to your relationships.
Yeah,
And I hadn't realized that. My ex and I used to compete on things all the time. And we just thought that was fun sport. But really, we were chipping away at our relationship and not realizing it because there was a winner and a loser. So, not that every day should be everybody gets an award day, but we should think about who we do compete with and who we don't, and who we
yeah,
work as a team with. If anybody has any questions, we're actually a few minutes over. A little bit of a quiet day today on the chat side, but I think that we've had such a good conversation that I think people are getting a lot out of this. Again, share the webinar, excuse me, the podcast with us again, Cass, and I look so
yeah.
forward to being on yours tomorrow.
Yeah, so you can go to realwomeninbusiness.com and find the latest episode as well as recaps from all of the guests that we've had so far, and, next Monday, you can tune in and listen to Lisa.
Any favorite one that if people were gonna go to and listen to first? I know
Ah,
that's like asking who
it's
your
so
favorite child is.
tricky. I mean, I would be, Teri Trespicio's episode. I adore Terry. She's so fun to have a conversation with, and she was so transparent, and she just gave us so many gifts in that episode, and then, honestly, the first episode with Jen Collins. Jen is a friend and a realtor in California, and she gave us so much in that episode too, and all of them are great, but if I had to pick 2, I'm gonna go with those.
That's so interesting. Roberta Bryan just put a quick comment in, loved listening in. Thanks, Roberta, great
Thanks,
to see you.
Lisa.
Terry Trespicio has actually been on our show
Yeah,
twice, and it's actually 2 of the most, watched episodes, and for that transparency and for that gift of conversation, and so, that's so great that you just mentioned Terry. So, for all of our listeners who are devotees to Lunch with Lisa and have watched Terry, at least go over and check out Terry's on Real Women in Business, and I'm sure then
absolutely.
you'll find others once you get there. So, Cass, I want to thank you for being on today. This was terrific. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and catch us again tomorrow, 12:15, Lunch with Lisa on YouTube, and look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks so much. Have a great day.